This just in. Some limp dicks online think the Germans made the biggest gun during World War II.
Not today, Satan. As long as I'm still breathing, no one, and I mean no one, is gonna take away America's God-given right to claim that we do everything the biggest. If there is a way to make something obnoxiously oversized, rest assured, we will find it. And kids, if you don't understand why bigger is always better, just ask your mom. She'll be happy to explain it to you.
That's what she said.
Alright, so here's the deal. If there is one thing America is known for, it's our ability to supersize the absolute hell out of everything. We are pioneers in excessive overkill and damn proud of it. So it really shouldn't surprise you that at some point the collective minds of military mad scientists looked at our fleet of artillery and thought to themselves, yeah, but what if we made it like stupid big? Well, joke's on you, because someone actually took that insane thought and turned it into reality. And what came out the other side was the Little David Mortar system, a name so aggressively misleading that it almost feels like an inside joke, and now that I think about it, it probably was. This was a highly classified project, and because the Little David Mortar was one of the largest indirect fire weapon systems ever built, it was probably in America's best interest to keep it on the down low.
Oh, I see. This must be G14 classified.
This metal monument to American might was designed to completely obliterate concrete bunkers in a single shot, and could do so while being lighter and easier to transport than the German propaganda machines that were put on display for the world to marvel at. Ugh, you're so stupid! The Little David was never designed to take out bunkers, nor was it ever used in combat. You should do your research before making yourself look dumb on the internet. Now where did I put my soy milk? Soy milk, huh? Well, that explains a lot, actually. Alright, fine. While it is technically correct to say that the Little David was never designed for combat, that doesn't at all take away from the fact that when America decides it wants to turn your bad decisions into your last decision, there is literally no one that does it better. This absolute unit of a weapon system came fully dressed out at 87 tons, could hurl a 3,600-pound shell miles away, and did so with only a 9-man crew. Alright, I get the feeling that you were dropped on your head one too many times as an adult, so let me put this in terms that even you'll understand. What I said was, America built a long-range ass-whooping dispenser that could deliver high-angle diplomacy over 95 freedom fields away, while dropping shells on you the size of your boyfriend's car. Or 48 Taylor Swifts, or just 12 average-sized liberals, whatever. It's a free country, you can choose your own units of measurement, as long as they're American in nature. I'm getting upset and sidetracked again. What were we talking about? Literally nothing you just said changes the fact that the Little David sucked ass. Otherwise, they would have made more than one. You know, man, you might have a point. Really? I mean, you damn right I made a good point. Yeah, man, of course. This is a setup, isn't it? Of course it is, because guess what? America only needed to make one when we decided to beat physics into submissions and turn it into a one-and-done solution. But for the rest of you with more than 2 neurons rubbing together, why don't we take a trip down memory lane to figure out why America felt the need to create an artillery system that was rated E for everyone. Alright, so now some context. I mean, there has to be a reason for this thing to exist, because nobody just wakes up one morning and decides to choose this level of unhinged violence. Okay, well maybe what I should have said was anyone who doesn't have the belt for back-to-back World War champs should wake up and choose this level of violence. Remember kids, the winners get to make the rules. Anyway, all of this started because of one fundamental truth. Warfare is all about firepower. And when it comes to said firepower on the battlefield, it has 2 main jobs. To either destroy enemy troops and equipment, or to facilitate the movement of friendly troops and equipment. Basically what I'm getting at is that we want to deprive you from having nice things while simultaneously moving our nice things into your once was home. And like most things, this concept is simple in theory but complicated in execution. And the reason it's so complex isn't hard to understand. For different kinds of situations, you need different kinds of firepower. Infantry needs small portable weapon systems, artillery needs long-range firepower, and then there are times when what you really need is something that can just straight up erase a fortified position entirely. And as you can imagine, during World War II, that last category was going to become a very big problem, and when I say big, I mean potentially world-changing big. The Germans, for example, had the Siegfried Line, which was a heavily fortified defensive network with reinforced bunkers and tank obstacles. But then it just kept going, with the Japanese defensive networks consisting of underground tunnels, hardened pillboxes, and fortified caves. Trying to take on this level of hardened stubbornness meant that using conventional ground weapons and tactics would create a high amount of casualties. And about the only tools we had at our disposal to crack open these tough problems were air dominance and naval power. But even these had their own sets of problems. For example, when it came to dishing out an aerial whooping, bombing was an option, but when the weather isn't cooperating, poor visibility meant accuracy issues. And when it comes to the Navy, despite them having huge and accurate guns, those guns aren't much use when the fight isn't anywhere near a coastline. So what's the solution then? Well, it had to be ground-based, so then the natural progression is to make the rounds go faster. It's America's best friend, speed and power, to the rescue. I mean, it's worked great for us in the past, so why wouldn't it show up and help us out again?
Okay. Power.
You try and
Power and speed solves many things.
Well, unfortunately, this all sounds good in theory, but for all parties involved, physics doesn't like to be pushed too far, and with this method, you start to run into all kinds of weird problems. For example, let's start with logistics. Longer barrels meant that guns became harder to move and set up. Furthermore, when you constantly subject those long barrels to the byproduct of speed, which is high pressure and heat, they wear out faster, which means less rounds can be put through them. And finally, a problem that a lot of people don't think about is that when you make bigger and more powerful guns, Sir Isaac Newton is going to make his presence known as he aggressively reminds you that for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. Or as he wrote in his New York Times bestseller, quote, "The harder ye shall yeet, the gun shall yeet back."
Speed and power doesn't work.
Well, crap. Now we're in a conundrum. Speed and power has always worked before. Like, that's what we're known for. That's what America is all about. So what in the hell are we gonna do now?
Holy Jesus. What the is that? What is that, Private Pile?
Okay, so this is where things start to go completely off the rails. Literally. So apparently over in Germany, they were thinking of a solution to the same problem we were having, but their solution was about as German as it gets. What they came up with was this thing, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. What you're looking at is a 31.5-inch railway gun that was so impracticably massive that it made even the dumbest of American superweapons look reasonable by comparison. The stats on this thing are so huge that they sound straight up made up, so might as well start with the main event, the business end. And in order for the Germans to achieve the desired effect of turning what once was into what now isn't, was a 10,000 plus pound high explosive shell that could reach out and touch you up to 30 miles away. Or, if you aren't an HE kind of girl, you could opt for armor-piercing shells that could punch through 3 feet of steel or up to 7 feet of reinforced concrete up to 24 miles away. Clearly, big power like this has to come with a trade-off, and if you guessed that that trade-off was immense weight, you'd be right. This feat of German engineering and laughable execution came in at a downright stupid 1,490 tons, or 2,980,000 pounds. That number is so incomprehensibly large that it's almost impossible to wrap your mind around it, so here's some context. A single railgun was the same weight as 165 blue whales, the largest animal that has ever existed ever. It was also the same weight as 7 fully loaded 747s, or if you're still struggling to comprehend the magnitude of this situation, it was the same weight as 37 fully loaded Waffle Houses, complete with waitstaff and a complimentary 1 a.m. fight in the parking lot. Now, like most things, the good idea theory always sounds good on paper, but in execution, let's just say this gun was less than practical. How impractical was it? Well, it required 25 rail cars to move it, needed up to 6 weeks to set up, had to be moved on twin custom-built rail lines, fired 1 round every 45 minutes, and needed somewhere between 1,500 and 2,500 personnel to get it fully up and running.
You serious?
I have no words for the magnitude of this level of stupidity. Actually, I take that back. I have plenty of words to say because Germany spent untold amounts of time, money, and man hours on this thing, with its greatest accomplishment being that it destroyed an underground ammo dump once.
How about no?
Yeah, America was going to take a hard pass on that one, and instead of over-engineering a railway gun that took a month to fire, the US military did what it does best, kept it simple, and made a big tube that could sling car-sized explosives to say hi to you in your concrete bunker.
Gotcha.
Nah, just kidding. We stuck to the old kinda reliable, aka aerial bombing runs. Alright, so it's decided. Here's the play. The US has now decided that aerial bombardment is going to be the answer. Supremacy by saturation, eradication by elevation, annihilation by aviation. You get the idea. If you dump enough bombs from the sky on anything, eventually something important has to break. That's just science. That being said, now we have a new problem. If bombs are our primary course of action, then we'll need to test bombs, and a lot of them. Sounds simple enough, so then what's the problem? Well, normally in situations like this, you just load up a couple of planes, drop said bombs from said planes, and see what happens. Again, that's how we would normally do it, but we're under a time crunch now because there's a trash stash wearing German douche that we now have to deal with. We can't have any delays in testing, so things like the weather, pilot error, and constantly having to wait till a plane does its whole ground to air to ground dance between each test is a no-go. Surely there has to be a better way, and there just so happens to be a solution to this problem. America's gonna call on another tried and true tactic: repurposing. And with that plan in mind, the Army Ordnance Department is gonna make Doge proud and repurpose a 36-inch naval gun barrel, dig it into the ground, and turn it into a bomb-testing cannon.
The kind of things we're doing are, I think, very, very simple and basic.
Thank you, Elon. I agree 100% with your assessment. Sometimes keep it simple, stupid is the correct response, and the result in this case was the T1 bomb testing device. And what's crazy is that it actually kinda worked better than expected until, you know, that damn good idea fairy came floating around again.
So Mario, you got brain freeze?
No, I got brainwave.
Get us back to the station, now!
Now, if we can be honest for a second, it's kind of understandable why they thought this would be a good idea. You gotta remember, around this time, things were already hot and heavy in the European theater, and across the horizon, everyone knew that the war in the Pacific was gonna be a real meat grinder. The Japanese had spent years turning islands into fortress networks full of deep bunkers, underground tunnels, and reinforced strongholds, all designed to make every single battle as painful as possible. Hindsight being what it is, we now have the luxury of sitting in our comfortable homes and playing the "that's not how I would have done it" game, but if you could just stop for a moment, take a breath, and put yourself in the shoes of an army weapons designer in the 1940s, and your job is to figure out how to deal with concrete bunkers that refuse to die, well, what would you do? Would you A, hope the weather holds out for aerial bombs, B, assume that the enemy will fight conveniently next to a coastline so that you can hammer them with naval guns, or would you C, take an experimental bomb testing device, scale it up to the size of a small building, and call it a day?
Oh, man. Oh, God. Oh, man.
Yeah, I know what I'm picking. Let's go with option C and call it a day. I mean, the logic was simple. Just take the T1, stick a rifled barrel on it, aim it at a Japanese bunker, and erase the entire position in one shot. No air support needed, no risky frontal assaults, just one well-placed shell turning reinforced concrete into an archaeology project. On paper, this was an incredible idea. I mean, we've got size, 36 inches of girth to be precise. The absolute largest in the world, I might add, an absolute unit. And all that thickness was used to launch a 3,600-pound shell packed with 1,500 pounds of explosives right on top of your position. And to top it all off, it was vastly logistically superior to the German design when it came to maneuverability. Coming in at 86.5 tons or 173,000 pounds, the Little David was downright nimble when compared to the 2 million plus pound German railway gun. Compared to the railgun's manpower requirement rivaling that of a community college campus, the Little David only needed 2 heavy-wheel trucks to move both sections. Furthermore, it needed just 9 guys and some basic construction equipment to include 5 men to load the propellant charge, 2 men to ram the projectile into the muzzle, and 2 guys to crawl into the barrel with hand brushes to clean it between firing. In theory, this simplistic design was perfect. All you had to do was truck it in, set it up, fire, and move on. Again, in theory. Fast forward a bit to 1944, and the first test began at Aberdeen Proving Ground, and technically speaking, they were successful. Let's start with the good news first. Alright, let's see what we got here. The mortar fired and the shell went downrange, and also it, No, that was it. Well, that didn't take too long, so what went wrong? First, there was the accuracy, or lack thereof. This thing was so inaccurate that hitting a single enemy bunker was more of a hopeful suggestion than a realistic expectation. And to further add insult to injury, not only was it impossible to get repeatable hits on target, but it also managed to pull off this terrible performance at laughably close distances. Its pathetic range of 5 to 6 miles meant that it was easily outranged by smaller, more practical artillery that was already on the battlefield, doing the job better than the Little David ever could. Then there was the setup time, which was a downright laughable 12 hours. Why did it take 12 hours? Well, that's because you had to dig it in. Hold on, what did he say? Wait a gosh darn minute. You said the only thing this needed to operate was 2 trucks.
No. That's not what I said.
No. What I said was it could be moved with 2 trucks. I purposely left out the part where it also needed a crane, a bulldozer, and some other supporting equipment to get it up and running. So no, I didn't lie to you. It's More like I strategically misled you. Speaking of strategy, remember that original strategy of just bombing the hell out of everything? Well, it turns out that was a good call, because by the time the little David was finally ready for combat, strategic bombing had significantly improved, and there was also some little fat boy men on the horizon that were about to make it irrelevant anyway. And with that, the little David had met its match and now holds the dubious honor of being the largest caliber artillery piece ever fielded by the US military, a title it earned by never actually firing a single round in combat. And instead of trying to salvage it or repurpose it, they just left it sitting at Aberdeen Proving Ground. It was an 80-ton steel-plated reminder that sometimes, as much as it pains me to say, bigger isn't always better. For decades, it didn't even get a proper storage space, but I'm happy to say that that's no longer the case, because today, it's stored at the US Army Ordnance Training and Heritage Center. That said, it doesn't matter what you think of the little David, because love it or hate it, you can't help but to be in awe of America's obsession with overpowered obliteration. That's it for today, you guys. Be sure to let me know down in the comment section what videos you demand to be next. Y'all take it easy. CT6 out.